more that you read, the more things you'll know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to read. Reading has the power to open our eyes, open our hearts, and truly transform us. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Muslim Bookshelf. I am your host, Naima B. Robert, and delighted that you've chosen to join me today, mashallah. As you know, this is a show that brings you up close and personal with some of the best books out there for Muslims. But I have something for you to think about. This show is not simply entertainment. It is not simply passing the time. We have an intention with this show, and this show is based on the premise that reading can make us better Muslims. I'm going to say that again. Reading can make us better Muslims. And our goal with this show is to bring into your homes books that, inshallah, will elevate you spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and inshallah, culturally as well. And if you're interested in knowing how you can inspire your children to elevate spiritually through a book, then I'm very excited to introduce you to today's guest, Mona Zac, who is the author of Connecting with Allah, which is a selection of poems about the names of Allah.
I am a mother, a wife, a daughter, sister, but most of all, and a creative, but most of all, I identify myself as a Muslim. I actually just fell into becoming an author. It wasn't something that I planned to do. When my daughter was young, I noticed how she learnt rhymes quickly, and I was really keen on teaching her who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was and his different names and attributes. And so it really emerged from there, where I just was like, let me write these poems for her. I showed it to a few people and they were interested, and yeah, it kind of went from there, and I realized that I really had a passion for it. I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I was a doctor, and then I left medicine. I was a teacher. I have been a pen consultant. I've been a receptionist. I've sold windows. I was one of those people who called people and sold windows. I am still a madrasa teacher. I've just had a lot of jobs in my life, and I love to travel. Been backpacking around Europe. I like adventure and I like creativity. I do like keeping fit, and so hobby-wise, I do tend to do a lot of I don't know whether it's a lifestyle or hobby, but I do enjoy keeping fit, working out, that kind of thing. But also just doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of painting, whatever different mediums I can get my hands on, I'll try. I just enjoy creating, really. I think my travels have influenced my writing. A lot of my writing is focused on faith, and I look around, especially like I said, I love nature and all of this, and I look around, not just in nature, but everywhere, and I see the blessings of Allah, and I try to look for it. It's something I actively try to look for, and I try to see people and their stories, and so all of that comes together to sort of feed into and inspire my writing further. The main thing that drives me as an author is I want Muslim children to be comfortable in their own identity. I write a lot, my sort of genre is Muslim kids lit, and I really want Muslim children to be comfortable in their identity, and I think that they deserve, and I believe that they deserve good quality books where they see themselves And, you know, for me, that is something that really drives me, as well as giving them this pride in being Muslim, not just in their identity, but this pride in knowing themselves, knowing that about their faith, knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, knowing the Prophet and his characters, and actually enjoying being Muslim. And that keeps me going, and that's what inspires my writing. With the right people, for me, that has been vital. And surrounding yourself with like-minded people, they don't necessarily have to be authors, but people who support your creative journey, and people who want to see you succeed, and people who believe in you. And you'll make mistakes along the way, and that's fine. But it's also honing in, and because the people who surround you will have an impact on your writing journey, because writing can often be something that is a lonely task. And when you hit writer's block, or if you're going through something, having the right people, making lots of dua, all those things are things that really will bode well in the long run.
Assalamu alaikum, sis. Welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you here to share this beautiful book with even more people. But before we dive into this gorgeous book, mashallah, this treasure trove, tell us who you are. Introduce yourself to the audience. How do you introduce yourself these days?
These days. So my name is Mona Abdul Qadir. I am a mom of 2 young children, and alhamdulillah, I'm an author that writes, you know, Islamic children's lit. So that's pretty much how I introduce myself these days.
Yes, I know. I love it, mashallah. I love it. So this book, Connecting with Allah, what is it about?
So this book actually is, the aim of this book, what I wanted for this book was to connect children's hearts to Allah in a way that was accessible to them. And I wanted it to make it rhyme, because my children love rhyme, and that's how things stick with them. They can remember any song, any this thing, you know, any tune, any poem. And so that's what I did. I did a lot of research, did a lot of work, and alhamdulillah, you know, used that to write these the book on Allah's names through poetry.
Absolutely. And basically what we have is a selection of poems that are exploring the names of Allah and introducing the names of Allah to children.
Yes.
Why is that important for children, do you think?
For a few reasons. I think back to when I was growing up, there were often 2 narratives when it came to who Allah was. One was very, you know, He's a very merciful Lord. And there was another narrative, I don't know whether anybody else had this, not so much my family, but, you know, the greater world that I was exposed to. There were a lot of do's and don'ts, and, you know, you have to do things a certain way, and if you don't, certain things will happen and things like that.
Certain things will happen? What is this?
So the anger.
For something? Like, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about, like, so a lot of Allah's anger was brought up, you know, that kind of thing. And
as in Allah will punish you?
Punish
or
you,
you'll go to
yes,
hell,
exactly. If you don't follow the rules, if you don't do this, that kind of thing.
So fear.
Fear, a lot of fear. And it didn't mesh with the Allah I knew from the dad I grew up with, because my dad is somebody who always says, you know, the closer that you get to Allah, the softer and gentler you should become. And to me, that doesn't gel with fear, you know. And so I actually wanted to learn about Allah's names for myself. And so there's I don't know if you've heard of her, Ustadha Jinan Yusuf, who's got this amazing book, Reflections on Allah's 99 Names. And she used to have a blog back in the day, and my cousins and I, we would go over this blog and we'd talk about Allah's names and reflect on it. And it was really interesting, because whenever I read it, it came to me in verse, like I remembered it in verse. And so I thought it was important to share it with my children in a child-friendly way. And so I wrote down a few poems, and then I just showed it to a friend of mine, and she's like, you have to do something with this. And so that's how it started. And I just think it's so important in this day and age, where children are exposed to so much that they understand who their creator is. And for me, it was also just such a personal journey. I got to know Allah better, you know, and it was just, Allah's so amazing. Like, do you know, like, He's so amazing. Like, it's just so amazing to share that with your kids. And what I really wanted was not just for it to be a kid's book, but for it to be a family book. Yes. And I remember talking to you about this.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's where families got together and read it and discussed it, and you know, everybody put in their thoughts and you know, all of that. And so, alhamdulillah, by Allah's will, it's kind of grown into that. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And what a blessing. And some families will sit down, they'll read it, and they'll talk about it, and they'll share reflections. Other families like mine, they'll sing it.
Yes.
Because it is very, very lyrical, mashallah, and poetic. Would you like to share one of your poems with us?
So the one I chose, and I think, again, this goes back to my dad and the softness and, you know, how he sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the poem's called Al-Latif, the most gentle, or the most subtle. Al-Latif is the most gentle. He takes care of your affairs and deals with you so kindly, even when you're unaware. From the Prophet, we learn that Allah loves when we're gentle. Harsh deeds are deprived of good, kind ones are monumental. To be worthy of His gentleness, you should act gently too. This shows your love and obedience, and to this name you'll be true. So yeah.
SubhanAllah. I love it. I love it. I think I'm going to share another one because I think that the viewers deserve to hear a bit more. So this one is Al-Mutakabbir, the Supreme One. Al-Mutakabbir is the Supreme One, greater than all creation. His greatness manifests itself in every situation. If pride creeps into your heart and you look down on those around, and you think your achievements and success are so great and so profound, remember Allah is above us all. Remember He's supremely great. Remind yourself all goods from Him. This thought will set your heart straight. So don't mock or insult anyone else for their looks or money or skin. Know what matters to Al-Mutakabbir is who you are deep within. Girl, come on, that's deep. And then I love this because there's a bit where you encourage them to reflect and act. And I noticed that a feature of your writing throughout this book and in general is that you like to take an Islamic idea and make it concrete for children and make it something that they can understand and relate to. And you want them to take action.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So, before being an author, I was many things. I had many professions. And one of the things I realized was often I could take in a lot of information, and I'm very good at that, but did I put that in action? And Islam, especially, you know, like I used to go for these Islamic courses and all of these things, and I would take it in, but then I didn't necessarily have these actionable points to kind of take this information and put it into action. And one of the things, I remember discussing this with you actually, and you know, we were talking about this during the journey of writing the book, was how are we going to engage children with the names? And for me, one thing that has always worked is conversation with my children. When we start sharing ideas and we talk about things, it sticks in their head better. They remember it for longer, and even if they forget it now, along the way, they'll remember the conversation. And so for me, that was so important, to have questions, to have reflection points, and then to ask Allah using His names. So in a lot of the reflection points, you know, there's make a dua using this name, right? Like, and I've even put place in the book where people can write their duas. Now, a lot of people are like, I don't want to write in the book. I'm like, feel free, you can write in the book.
It's a beautiful book. I can imagine people not wanting to write in it.
But yeah, I do want me, I do want my children to use the names of Allah when they're asking dua, you know. And the other thing really about the book, when I think about it, is Allah is as we think of Him. And I wanted children to see, because one of the things I realized while writing the book was anything that Allah has allowed is for our benefit, and anything that He's not allowed is for our protection. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where I wanted people to just, how do you think of Allah? Like, even if the names, like, you know, Ar-Raqib, the watchful, like, it sounds like, oh, He's watching me all the time, but really, if it's out of, when you think about it in a different way, and when you look into the name in depth, it's more this soft kind of like watching over you, you know, like
like a wakil.
Like, yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those things where it just, I want people to think of Allah, and that my favorite name is Al-Latif, like the most gentle, like that's how, you know, there's a softness to it, there's a, I don't know, there's a kindness, there's just something very soft about it. And so I want people to look in the book and see Allah, you know, in the ways that He describes Himself, you know.
So, no, I love that. And you've got it broken up in the sections: loving Allah, knowing Allah, asking Allah, and finally blooming with Allah's names, right? So I'd like to share this one with the audience, and then let's look at the reflection and action points from it. This one is Al-Mu'min, the source of faith. Al-Mu'min is the source of faith. His promises are true. If you ask Him and act righteously, He'll give strong faith to you. As humans, we have weaknesses and long for security. It's through pure faith in Allah our hearts are gifted sincerity. If you say your Lord's Allah and act upon that statement, the angels will say, don't grieve or fear, as Jannah's your final placement. So then you ask them to consider, what does Allah as the source of faith mean to them? How do you think faith in Allah makes us feel safe and secure? I like the way you got them to think about that question. It's like, it's not a right or wrong, it's what's coming up for you. Right? And then ask Al-Mu'min to bless you with Iman for your whole life. I love that with this, with this really playful image. And the book, in terms of its style, is very playful. It is. Even though the rhyme is quite classical in nature, and obviously is, you know, azim, like it's about some heavy things. And it's, you know, quite serious isn't the word, but it's it has gravitas, it has weight, right? But the illustrations are so cute. So
I was really lucky to work with Nirma, who goes by the Lettered Inkling online, but she is, subhanAllah, we have this really interesting relationship where I do not visualize, I can't visualize the pictures.
Interesting.
I can't, I don't know. Like,
okay, so, that's good.
And
that's good.
I will tell her, and she will immediately say, this is what comes up. Like she gets it immediately. She's, you know, and it was just such a joy because I didn't have to explain. And then she would be like, I don't think this is working. I mean, I think there was one poem, just one, where we were just like, this is, neither of us are getting it. Let's come back to it later.
Okay, I want to know which one that was now.
I think it's Al-Kabir. And it was, finally we ended up with mountains in the back. But we just, it was one of those things, and it was so lovely because what we didn't want for it, and I think because my style of poetry, and we've spoken about this, because I was like, should I do amusing poetry? And you're like, no, your style's classical, stick to your thing. But I think what we didn't want was a book that then stayed on a shelf.
That feels too kind of formal and classical, like a book that you need to kind of treat with. I know what you mean. I know what you mean by that.
So we wanted something where, for instance, my kids are, you know, even if they're just looking through the pictures, sometimes my son just looks at the pictures.
Yeah, my daughter
that's
did
fine.
that too. Yeah, my daughter was doing that too.
And I love that. It's because I feel like even when a child, and that's actually one of the first stages of reading, right, with children, is just turning through books. Like, you know, picture books, it's just playing with books. And I love that they're just engaging with the color and everything, and slowly it'll come, you know? They'll engage with it enough and it'll come, inshallah. But I did want to make this a book for children, for families, you know. And so it had to, for me, it had to be colorful and it had to be, you know, interesting. And I'm very lucky in that I have two very opinionated children.
So they will tell you if it's not working.
They tell me about the poems as well. My daughter will just be like, do you expect a 6-year-old to understand that? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, sorry.
You need to have these honest critics in your family, subhanAllah. And so how many poems are in the book?
So there are 77 names covered. I think it's covered in 50 it's been a while now. 50 poems, I think. So 50 or so.
Because you grouped
two,
some of
yes,
them.
like Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim.
Right.
You know, quite a few have two names together.
Did you struggle with any of the names? Or were there any that you
did.
chose to just say, you know what, I will leave this one maybe for another project?
I think the two names that I actually struggled with are, and I'll tell you, is remember it's al-Zahir and al-Batin. And part of the reason, so it's the uppermost one and the intimate one. It's described in so many places in so many different ways.
Oh.
And so, you know, the niya, and so it became one of those things where I was like, there's a lot of information.
Right, right.
How am I going to condense this information?
And simplify it.
Without leaving out important things. And then there reached a point where I kind of had to tell myself, look, Allah's names are so deep. I can't. Like, I had to have that conversation with myself. I cannot put everything in here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a poem.
It's like exactly. How many stanzas?
Poem.
Where are we going to do? What are we going to do with this?
So, what I did was I stuck then to Ustad Janan's work, and I, stuck to all, and all the poems have are based on hadith. From, and I didn't, to the best of my knowledge, there's no weak hadith in there. So I've tried to use,
because there's proofs, isn't there?
There's proofs. I've got all the
pages
proofs,
where
correct,
you've got the references.
The references
and
everything.
Throughout the whole book.
I've put in the references. I've put in the verses. It's from the Quran. It's from the hadith. And so I then took the main points that I could, and I put. But that poem, I think. It took me a long time. Normally, by Allah's will, if I'm reading the research, it just, and again, this is a gift from Allah. I take zero credit from it. It's just something I've always been able to do, where things come to me. I'll read it, and then the rhyme just pops.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so it just comes to me. And so, normally that's the case, and with the hadith and stuff, that's what I do. I just,
as you're reading,
as I'm reading,
do you
it's just
think
coming.
in rhyme?
Do I think in rhyme? No, but often I will tell my children instructions in rhyme, and it drives them
so
up
you
the
speak
wall.
in rhyme?
I speak in rhyme. It drives my whole family, and this is it because. Okay, so I'm going to be honest. English is like my worst subject.
Really?
That the only subject I got a B in.
So talk to us about that, because a lot of people do think that, if somebody's sitting here on the Muslim bookshelf, or they've got their books up on bookshelves or in the bookshop, etc., this must have been somebody who was either gifted from a young age, or was always good at English, or maybe did a degree, has always been, encouraged to be a writer. Was that the case with you?
No, I'm very much a science and maths person. Give me a maths book and I'm happy. Wow. You know what I mean? It makes sense. There are steps. There's an answer. You know what I mean? It's good. English felt very vast to me. But, so my grandfather was one of the first English-speaking headmasters in Sri Lanka, Muslim ones.
Right.
And in our family, I'm talking about people born in the 1920s. All the women were educated from, who were born even in the 1920s. They went on to be teachers, doctors, professor, like different things. And reading was such a big part of our house. Even now, like my father's house growing up, our house, books were just there. But I never thought of myself as a reader, because my younger sister, for instance, would have like one book here, one book here. I just had one book. You know what I mean?
She had like five.
Yeah, basically. She's like, in case I finish one. And I'm like,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
So I never really, I read a lot, but compared to the other people in my family.
I think it's, you know what it's like in families where everybody has a role to play. There's the sciencey one, there's the artistic one, the writery one, the one who nobody really knows where to put them. Okay.
But so I didn't really.
So you didn't feel like that was
No, I didn't feel like that was
my
my thing. But what I did always do, and it, like I said, it used to, my sister's like, why are you doing this? I would just make songs up. I would make songs up about my mom's food. I would make ditties up about, you know, my sisters.
That resonates. I can see that through your work, for sure. That makes a lot of sense because that's the type of writing that you do, mashallah.
So it was just one of those things. And what was interesting is, even though my sisters were like, oh my God, are we doing this again? And I'm like, yes, we are. They would remember it. And I'm like, okay, this is a great way for people to remember this. You know, it sticks. So yeah, but alhamdulillah, it was, I just enjoyed doing it. And my father and myself, we love poetry.
Right.
So it's not uncommon to be in a family gathering and my father's reciting poetry. It's not uncommon. Like, he will say, the great wide world. And yeah, just like, okay.
So whose poetry does he recite?
He recites like very old poetry, but so do I. I recite like Le Hans Abu bin Adam. It's like my party trick.
Sorry, who, what?
So when we were growing up, I went to an Indian school in the Middle East, and we actually did a lot of poetry.
Right.
And it's so interesting because we did the albatross, we did, you know, tiger, tiger, you know, we did, and I still remember poems from when I was like in grade 2.
What? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
But that makes sense because, especially if you've been exposed to classical poetry, that is typically, you'll see it in your own poetic style, right? And I think that you do have a very classical poetic voice, mashallah. So that is extremely interesting. But I have a question actually, because I want to know. Yeah. So you had a house filled with books, right? I'm assuming your house is filled with books. So this is the conundrum and this is the question. Do you, in your view, do you think it's enough for a house to be full of books to get our children into reading? Or do we have to be a bit more proactive, especially today? I'm just asking.
So here's the thing, and it's really interesting because I was just talking to somebody about this very same concept, where often we want our children to do things that we ourselves are not willing to do.
Ooh, whoa, okay, whoa, hold on a minute. I don't know whether we're ready for that, guys, sorry. Say that again, please.
So often there are these expectations, and we put it under the guise of this. We put it under the guise, oh, I've heard it, not everyone, you know, of I want my children to be better than me.
Right.
And I often wonder whether that's kind of placing a lot of expectation on a child's shoulders, which is, you know, the different conversation to have. But for me, if I'm not doing it, and Allah's going to question me about everything, but He's going to question me about me, you know, and if I'm not doing it, whether it's memorizing Quran, whether it's, you know, reading Quran, whether it's manners, whether it's, you know, regulating myself emotionally, all of these things, is it fair then for me to expect that of a 9 and a 7-year-old who are watching everything I do, right? If I'm on my phone all the time, then, you know, their question is, like, you know, like the other day my son actually said, so they're allowed to watch 30-minute. The show called Wild Krat. It's about animals.
Yeah, I remember watching it. My kids used to watch it.
And I was like, just one, finished. And, you know, and he's like, but how come you watch more than one? And I'm like, listen, you and I, we're not the same. And he's like, yes, I understand that, but how come? And it's a fair question. And again, it's different. Because
we want to know, did you have an answer for this question?
I didn't.
Or were you stuck there thinking, oh, I just got caught out right now?
No, I mean, I did. I'm like, you know, because I'm the mother. And he's like, well, that's not a reason.
No,
and
that's
I'm
not
like,
a reason. I'm team son right now. What do you mean? Because I'm the mother.
I'm the adult.
I get more Wild Krats than you, okay? I'm the mother.
No, so he basically was just like, you know, it's not fair that, you know, you and Baba watch more than one episode and of whatever show y'all are watching, and we're only allowed to watch one. I mean, we don't even have a TV in our house. Like, it's like, you know, we watch it on the laptop or whatever. But he, and so it's true. Like, one of the things I noticed was my daughter's an avid reader. I'm talking like my sister. she will finish like
one here, one here,
one here,
there,
one here.
there.
It's. I mean, to the extent we have to put in like time limits now. It's like otherwise nothing gets done.
Right.
It's like we need to stop. You know, have you prayed? You know, it's like constant. So, and we noticed that wasn't the case with my son. And what I realized was my daughter was the first granddaughter, so there was constantly everybody was reading to her. You know, aunts, grandfather, like grandmother, like everybody was constantly reading to her. And whereas with my son, he was now the third grandchild, and we're all still reading, but it's not as consistent and things like that. And so I now incorporate what we call family time in the evening, and we all sit there. It doesn't matter what you're reading, you're reading.
Right.
And he, you know, sometimes he reads to the family, you know, he likes comics, and so we get him like Tintin and stuff. I'm like, go ahead, knock yourself out. You're reading, alhamdulillah, it's, you know. The other thing that I realized was he also loves audiobooks. And so I'm like, I do a lot of long car journeys. I don't see a problem with this.
We love those.
I love audiobooks because, and for me, I do believe stories are meant to be heard.
Yes.
You know,
well, that's always been the way.
The way, correct.
The oral transmission
exactly.
of those stories.
And if you look back in history, you know, that's how it is.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of that. And sometimes you have to meet people where they are. And if meeting him where he is more audiobooks, more family time, then we'll do that.
Okay.
But yeah,
so
I
that's
think
working for him.
It's working for him. And, you know, it's alhamdulillah, now he's like a stronger reader. And so I do think, but it also took all of us sitting in a circle.
Yes.
Kind of being together as a family unit with our books for him to kind of go, this is something I want to be part of.
For sure, right? Yeah, because I'm just thinking of, you know, obviously the biggest pull on our time that pulls us away from everything pretty much is usually a screen somewhere, right? Whether it's a phone, tablet, TV, whatever. And you're right. If we as parents just spend most of our time on our phone when we're not doing chores, but we're sending the kids to go and read Quran, go and do your muraja'a, you know, can't you read a book? You know, that type of thing. You're right. They look at us and they see that, well, you're not practicing what you preach. And you're basically saying, do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah.
But I would argue that we need the reading just as much.
As they do. Correct. 100%. 100%. I think what reading has afforded me is I almost like it's so many things, but one of the things it's afforded me is this chance to almost dive back into childhood, because it's like this, you know, you just sit and read, you know, like the days when you could just sit and read.
Yes.
But, you know,
yes.
back in the day.
Yeah.
But like the family time has afforded us that. Wow. Like now we can sit and read, or if we're reading a book to the family, like, so I'll read a book out loud, or my husband will read a book, and we're sitting there reading, and everybody's just enjoying each other's presence and each other's, you know, company. And I think the other thing it's afforded me is it's given me better conversation with my children.
Of course.
Right. So now it's my daughter, for instance, will talk to me about, she just started reading Harry Potter, and she's very, again, and I think there is a fear nowadays about what's in books, and that's but I've never shied away from it. I have conversations with my daughter, and I'm like, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, these are the things, you know, we have rules. So anything you hear, you shut the book or read or watch, you shut it, you say the isti'adah, and you come and tell an adult, right? Like, these are the steps, so it's not in your head or whatever. And she was reading Harry Potter, and I think she got to book 5, and she read it in like a week, like less than a week for most of the books. And she got to 5, and she's like, you know what? I think that from here on, these ones need to be when I'm older. And
really?
Yeah. So she came, and even though she was desperate to read it, she's like, I think there's some stuff here.
Have you read the Harry Potter series?
I have.
Was she right?
There's like some boy girl, you know, they start like, you know,
having feelings.
Okay. So then she basically was like, this is not. Okay. And
very mature approach.
Alhamdulillah. And I think, you know, may Allah preserve her. Again, each child is different. I don't know whether my son would do the same. You know, it's not me. It's like what Allah gives you, right?
Yes,
you know, it's a gift from Allah. But it's one of those things where I have spoken to them. I said, this is what, I don't shy away from these topics with them, and I say this, that. But I think that is also a lot of fear. So I understand where parents are coming from when they're like, I can't just go to the library. I don't just go to the library. I'll be honest, because my library has like a whole, like a whole area. So, we have to do a lot of research and all of these. And now, alhamdulillah, there are things that are helping people.
Yes.
But I think reading is, unlike film, I don't know, have you ever watched a movie of a book that you've read?
Yes.
And I don't know how you felt about it. Like, how did you feel about it?
It depends.
Okay.
Right? I think it very much depends. I mean, the two are very different mediums, right?
Yeah.
So they will explore a story in different ways. I just think it's a different skill set.
Correct.
I just think enjoying a film and enjoying a book are two different skill sets,
exactly.
right? And I think it's almost unfair to compare them, right?
I think the one thing, though, for me is my imagination of Harry Potter, for instance, was completely different.
No, the film was not good. No. Sorry, we have to end there. Okay.
No, but
definitely.
So I think like in terms of, I always prefer reading a book first.
Yes.
So I have my own idea.
You have your own experience of the book before you have another person's experience.
Correct.
Because that's what the film is, isn't it? The director and the actors and even the screenwriter have their own experience of the book and their own perspective, mashallah. Listen, sis, we want to know what is up next. Obviously, we have a journal here, gratitude journal, mashallah. But what's up next for you, and how can people connect with you?
So what's up next?
You got a few little irons in the fire at the moment.
There is one project I'm working on for the NHS, alhamdulillah. Inshallah. So inshallah, information about that will slowly come out. But the bigger project that I'm working on with you as well is a book on character for Muslim children based on the character of the Prophet sallallahu, and I'm really excited about that. That's something I've been thinking about doing for a long time. I didn't know how to get it down. And then when we connected, I was like, how do I get this? And we went back and forth, and alhamdulillah, there's a format now that I'm quite excited about. And I'm really looking forward to having that book out there. And again, as with connecting with Allah, subhanallah, when you do these things, it impacts you yourself. Like when you're reading about the character of the Prophet, sallallahu, like subhanallah, it just, you're just blown away. It's transformative, and I hope it is for other people too.
Inshallah. Well, I can't wait to see the impact that this book and all your other books are going to have, inshallah. And as always, our dua is that your books end up on Muslim shelves everywhere. Ya Rab, make it happen. Jazakallah khairan, sis.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much for having me.
For more books for Muslim families, check out our weekly reading list. A Picnic of Poems in Allah's Green Garden by Dawood Wansby. Like the Prophet series by Maoon Uddin Khan. Islamic Seerah books for Muslim kids series by R.S. Khan. Tune in to join our weekly competition. Just answer the question on the screen and you could win our award-winning book collection. Mona said she has done many jobs in her life. Which one of these jobs did she not do? A. Teacher. B. Doctor. C. Vet. D. Windows salesperson. To enter, email tmbs@islamchannel.tv. Terms and conditions apply.